everybody. I'd like to welcome Charles Brungardt here. How are you, man? How you doing?
Good, good. How about you? It's
I'm great, man. We just so the audience knows we've known each other. Years are going by, man.
yeah.
I mean, when did you start working with us on Star Citizen? You remember the year?
Oh man, was that I'm trying to think. I remember The
13?
Office. Yeah, it was like 13. Yeah, 'cause I think we had one of our first releases in like 2010, 2011, and we moved into like this temporary office for about 8 months, and that's when you guys came out and
Yeah.
visited. So yeah, I think it was like 2012 or 2013. But it was actually right after you guys did it might have been the first or the second Citizen Con. You were still in the old house.
Oh,
So
then it was definitely 13. Yeah,
yeah.
the basement. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
something. And we had I mean 50 pounds of crap in a 5 pound apartment in that place, man. It was like just too many people. If one person got a cold, we all got it.
Yeah.
You know.
I never, for whatever reason, when we went out there, I never went in the house. I remember going by it, but for some reason we weren't invited in. I think it was more just because you guys, I think we had an offsite somewhere for the first summit we
We
did.
did, yeah, we
Yeah.
did. It was just we had nowhere we had one tiny conference room. We had nowhere to meet. So it's like it was good for starting out, but we needed to move out of there. So you did Arena Commander, you worked for there for a few years, but then you got into like the horror genre with Predator and Killer Clowns, and how did you guys move into that?
Yeah, I remember we were actually in the UK, and someone I remember telling, I think it was like Carl Jones or something, we're at a summit there for Star Citizen, and we were like, you know, we said something about I said something to them about, oh yeah, there's this interesting like asymmetrical horror title that this group called Gun Media approached us about. And so that was actually um the precursor to Friday the 13th. So really what it was is we got a call from Wes at Gun Media. He knew one of our friends that was the president of Turtle Rock, and Turtle Rock did a bunch of asymmetrical games, so they reached out to them about, or well, sorry, Evolve, and we actually were also working on Evolve. We had a small contract on Evolve at the time. We're working on Star Citizen,
Mhm.
and so Turtle Rock called me and said, "Hey, this group is interested in a horror game. It's called." Or he didn't say horror game. He said a game called Summer Camp, and he's like, it's an asymmetrical game, and I'm like, huh, that's kind of weird. Like the first thing that went to my head was like a kids game.
Yeah.
So that's when Wes called me at Gun and kind of said, hey, we have this idea for a horror game, and you guys have asymmetrical experience because you worked on Evolve, and they recommended you guys, and so we did a small prototype, and then that ended up becoming Friday the 13th. And I think like for me at least, it we kind of fell into horror more just because it was a really fun game to work on, and it was different. I think at the time we were known more for like shooters. We did
Mhm.
Nexias, which was a shooter. We did the single, or sorry, the first person stuff in the shooter stuff in Star Citizen, and so that was kind of our specialty. We also were working on Armored Warfare with Obsidian.
Mhm.
I think around the same time, maybe a little bit before, and that was also kind of a shooter, right? So doing horror was different, and I always liked how you could kind of mess with the player a lot, like whether it's audio, whether it's kind of visual, um, and really just making horror work in a multiplayer sense, in an asymmetrical sense. It was very challenging. So it just became kind of a love. And then, moving on, we're like, well, let's do more. Like it was really more about asymmetrical at the time than horror. Predator was, very much like action. If you
Mhm.
look at it, I don't think it's really considered a horror movie. Like we always kind of considered it action horror. I mean, I guess you can.
Yeah, no, I get that.
Um, but that was different, and it kind of took us back to the what we were really good at, which was first person shooters, and then we mixed it at kind of what I felt we became good at was, the asymmetrical horror game. So um, it just kind of worked out, and I think it was really fun times around those days, especially around Star Citizen, because as we started and kind of left Star Citizen, it was right when we were transitioning into Friday, or F13, and um, behavior had Dead by Daylight, but we were also working with behavior with you guys. So it was kind of funny because like I remember the day we launched, it's like I got we were on Skype at the time, like a Skype from some of the behavior guys, and they were like, oh yeah, you guys can do it, like you got, because we are having server issues and all that stuff, and it was just kind of fun, like banter with them. So it was kind of cool because they were very deeply involved with their own version of asymmetrical horror. So it was kind of cool to like have a different perspective, and all be kind of friends in a way in that sense. So but yeah, it was cool. And then we just kind of moved on from there. Killer Clowns was us kind of helping TerraVision getting that game out the door and all that kind of stuff. And it more comedy. I think Ghostbusters, it can be horror but also leaned in comedy, so
Sure.
that was also an experiment. But yeah, now we're back to real deal slasher horror. So, and I think we got the best one,
The
I
top
feel, to do it
franchise you
with.
could
So
get.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
and when
So
you say, I have this weird theory about games. We've both been doing this a long time, that every game we make, or any game you make, it actually breaks down to what you did in the backyard as a kid. And
yeah,
when you say asymmetrical, we're talking King of the Hill, right?
yeah,
You're talking we've got one player and then three or four or five other people against you, right? It's almost and so there's every game can, Army, Cowboys and Indians, Red Rover, they all break down into just that's what we
yeah,
did as
like Sharks and
children.
Minnows,
Yeah,
like
sure, exactly. Same thing.
baseball. I used to say this all the time because I think every time we do interviews about the games we make with asymmetrical, like it it's a relatively it's a genre that's been around forever. So in one sense in gaming, it's still relatively new, and we feel it's like new. There's a lot you could still do, even though, there's been asymmetrical games. I mean, for a while, I think we could even look at what is it? Maybe the first Left 4 Dead could have been one of the
Mm,
earlier ones. I know there was something before that too, but like in a multiplayer sense where they had the two kind of factions, and it was multiple against like one or two monsters, like and then the guys that did Left 4 Dead, obviously they went on to do Evolve, and that became,
yep,
I think, where it became known, asymmetrical horror, and then Dead by Daylight, and then kind of
yep.
F13 and everything from there. And there's a bunch of other great ones too that were out there, like the Evil Dead game, like. And to me, it's just there's so much more you can do than what we're doing now. And I think always trying to evolve that genre is kind of the one of the challenges that we're trying to do. It's like, how do we push it forward? How do we make it something that no one's ever seen again? Because as soon as people hear about asymmetrical horror games or an asymmetrical game, they're kind of like, oh yeah, like I've seen that before. But I think there's a lot they haven't seen, and I think there's a
Right.
lot that we're gonna see people make that has never been thought of. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of how in interviews we've always described it, was like, baseball, like that's like an super old school, like
Hmm.
asymmetrical game, right?
Yeah.
So
Well, it's like you can do in the monsters, or the single person could be anything. It could be a person. You could be Godzilla. It could be. I mean, there's all kinds of things
yeah,
that it's still to go. And I think you guys are kind of on the ground floor of a lot of these asymmetrical. It's an explosion right now. It's really hot in the marketplace. And I mean, you had
yeah,
what? You had in Killer Clowns. You had seven. Was it seven players versus one, or was it five?
yeah,
Seven, I
yeah,
think. Yeah.
yep,
And
7v1,
that's
yeah,
starting to stretch the limits. Like you said, you guys are doing different things now. I don't know what you're doing in Halloween, but I am looking forward to
yeah,
seeing some of that stuff. And I know that we're kind of early, so we can't go too deep in Halloween. And for the fans to know, we will have you back on when it's getting closer. You do have a release date. You've announced a release date. Are you comfortable
yeah, yeah,
talking about that?
yeah. September 8th is our release date, so coming up relatively soon. But yeah, I mean, it's been fun. It's fun going deep into it.
Hmm.
And Michael Myers is a very special killer. So I think uh there's a lot of cool stuff. I mean,
I
yeah,
can't
so there's
wait.
definitely a lot that they could talk about there, and a lot more to talk about in the future. So
Well,
yeah.
that'll be fun. I mean, that's the cool thing is you're getting to work on it. And so you've been building IllFonic. How long has IllFonic been around altogether?
So we're about 19 years now. I
That's
think we're
amazing.
coming up on 19 in November of this year. And that was kind of like the early formation. Um, you know, worked for about 6 months over remotely over the internet. I was actually in the music industry. So I was in uh, a guy named Raphael Sadiq, who's our co-founder. We were just working on albums and records. And I think we started IllFonic just because we were honestly tired of working on some of the music in the music industry. Like everything was so, watered down and just the same. And I like it's really weird. It's I've seen things in previous industries, like in the music industry, there was a lot of the same challenges back then, and this is
Mhm.
early 2000 that I think the game industry is facing now.
I
Um,
agree. There's a lot of similarities, especially in delivery of products.
yeah,
You know, I mean,
no,
look,
absolutely.
I mean, the Xbox Pass was. I kept saying it was kind of like Spotify, and I didn't necessarily believe that was good for us. That, you
Yeah,
know,
I mean, to whole I always, yeah, it was something that I remember having this discussion with a bunch of music industry people maybe
mhm.
10 years ago. They were like, oh, yeah, when's the video game industry going into a streaming structure? And I'm like, well, everyone was kind of together holding out. So, so it happens and it goes the way it goes. And I think, what I learned in the music industry is, for years, format change was always a good big thing. Like
Mhm.
every time a new format would come out, you go from vinyl to tape to CD.
Oh yeah,
That's a huge amount of sales over again. It's a lot
true.
easier in music to, remaster than it is in games, I feel. But that's kind of a lot of the very good kind of, the game industry has always gone through ups and downs. I think format change is always harder in the game industry because things have less of a shelf life.
Hmm.
Um, but what was always interesting is you started seeing format change from, what kind of HD remixes, and you get to play your favorite game over again in a better light. And, you know,
Well,
um,
well, even more than that, you've got like, I mean, we're not young, we're
yeah,
not that old, we're not in the no foot's in the grave yet, but at the same time, children the games that came out in like 90 to 95 to 2001 to somewhere in there, like those there's a lot of single player adventure games in there because when we started, most of it was single player, and it's hard to
yeah,
do single player and real hard to do single player. And so a lot of people were doing multiplayer a lot. We're doing these other things that get communities together. And so there's a lot of these good products that are out there that are still that need to be remastered. I mean, like Shadow of the Colossus broke
yep,
records when it came out. You have Mark Skelton's working with you now
yeah,
from Shadow.
yeah.
So,
No, like Mark, always big fan, and that Shadow remake was amazing. And so, um, yeah, I mean, they nailed it. And I think like what was interesting is, is the last probably 10 years or so, the technology's changed. It's still getting better and better, but the way we develop is kind of staying a bit more the same, which is nice
mhm,
in a way because it allows us to easily go back. I mean, like I really respect the guys that are, building, dusting off these Super Nintendo games and Nintendo games, and they're kind of remastering
yeah.
those, are bringing them to new formats, from old kind of code. Like that's like there's a lot that's involved in that. Whereas now, you know, Unreal 3 to Unreal 5, yeah, there's some change there, but at the same time, like it's a lot easier to remaster an Unreal 3 game or an Unreal 4 game than it is
Sure.
to go back to like pre those times, or especially like
Huh.
homebrew engines, which I guess Shadow was its own
Dude,
Shadow of the Colossus. So
that's when I broke in the industry on Wing Commanders and stuff. We didn't have engines to choose from. We made our own. Even
yeah,
Starlancer was our own engine. Conquest Frontier Wars own engine. It's like and technically, even though Star Citizen is based on the Cry engine, it's not anymore. I
no,
mean,
there was a lot of change. Yeah, there was a lot there that was different. That was own proprietary tech, and it was cool to see that. see
Well,
that change. So
it should have been Unreal. I had that argument with Chris back in the day that was we were tooling around GDC trying to figure an engine out, and Unreal was just head and shoulders above anything else. But CryEngine threw some assets at us. They
there's
Paul Reindell and others they would give us people to help make the demo, and that ultimately allowed us to do the Kickstarter, or the crowdfund. So it worked
yeah,
out.
I mean luckily that's how we got the gig is because we
Yeah,
were one of the
yeah,
only studios that knew CryEngine. I think we were the
yep.
first independent studio to ship uh, outside of Crytek to ship a game on CryEngine 3. And we did it with 13 people. And I think
Yeah,
that
that's
was
amazing.
it was extremely hard. I mean, it was a tough engine, but they were miles ahead on the render. Like the real-time rendering engine is
Hmm.
still like to this day, I mean, there's times where we're like, we wish we had that tech,
Yeah,
that it was incredible. So I think for the project that Chris was building, it was the right call. I
I
mean,
agree
there's
with that.
definitely struggles here or there. There's definitely every engine has its limitations,
Of
and
course.
you have to build for the game you want to make. And unfortunately, I think a lot of us nowadays were taught to stay within the confines of an engine. So if an
Mm.
engine was good making a shooter, then we kind of need to stay in that box. Like, don't make an open world game. And I'm glad to see companies like CIG and other companies out there that are pushing these engines as far as they can go, but also having to build their own tech to support what they want to build rather than not dumbing down their game, but like
Yeah,
compromising their game.
we took a homebrewed RTS engine and made a RPG out of it. Like
Yeah,
it was just had to, and it was in space. It was 6 degrees of freedom, and we had to put land. It was put a plane in there. It was interesting. It worked out pretty well for us. But actually, that game got killed by Universal. The only game I've ever been on in my life, Chuck, that was 6 months ahead of schedule. Six
yeah,
months ahead, but Universal was broke because back then World of Warcraft was sucking up all the money, and they had to kill pretty much every project but World of Warcraft. It worked out for them, but
yeah.
that's all
We
right.
we I can't really go into what it was or who the partner was, but we had a game that we worked on that was very close to ship and kind of same thing, just internal struggles or corporate companies that change hands or something. Like it's always unfortunate, but that's kind of the name of the game. I mean, I think as bad as it is out there, right now for the game industry, you know, I I think it's gonna get it's gonna get better.
It will get better.
And it will get better. It's just, and we've seen it before, especially like around 2008 when we started. And I think, but not maybe to this level. However, we were able to cut through the noise in
Yeah.
2008 because of everything crumbling around us. And I think, bad financial times bring big opportunity, I feel.
Well,
And, you
that's
know,
it. Look, we're game
so
makers. We're game
yeah,
makers. So what are you going to do when the world's crumbling around you? You're still going to make games. So I think, and games when I started were you put a GDC a GDD together and you pitch it as a pitch document and you get funding. Now you have to prototype and do much more work to get the funding. And to be fair to the publishers, AAA games are no longer $1 million experiences.
yeah,
They're 20, 30, up to $1 billion in some cases. So it's a
yeah,
much bigger experience for them to have to make a decision on. And I understand. So we're kind of going through a transition. That's okay. And I don't mean to. I could talk to you all day. You know that. But I'm going
yeah,
to
yeah.
run out of time here, and we
No,
we
you're
only have a
good.
small show. So
Yeah.
Halloween's coming out September 8th.
Yep.
Yeah. Is there a place to wish list right now?
Yeah, you could wish list on I think all the platforms, so like Steam, Xbox, Epic Game Store, PlayStation. It's also up on all those stores for pre-order. So
I love it. I love it. Well, I'm looking forward to it. And we'll check in with you again. Love talking to you always as your friend. I enjoy what you're doing. I love hearing the experiences. There should
yeah,
be a war stories podcast for all of us. You know what I mean?
I know. Yeah,
We
we could talk all day about it for sure.
absolutely. Well, listen, you have a great rest of your day, and the
Yeah,
show
you
will be
too.
out. We'll see you. I would say in the verse, but we'll just see you around the web.
Yeah, congrats on getting. It's cool to see the band all get back together
Yeah,
too.
it's
So
fun. It's fun.
yeah.
All
All
right,
right.
brother. Well, thank you.